Hello everyone, welcome to another video. Now, today we're going to talk about what's quicker, triple screen, a single screen, or VR. But right from the off, I'm going to say that I don't think I've ever spoken about a topic or covered something that has so many caveats. Because no matter which one you go for, triple screen, single screen, VR, you're always going to have to make some compromises. There's always going to be a trade-off somewhere. But I had a spare day, so I thought, you know what? Let's try and find out and try and extract some useful information. And at the end of the video, I'm going to give you my opinion on which I like best and what I would suggest you do if you're brand new to sim racing. So for this test, I've chosen two different racing disciplines. Tin top racing, namely the Porsche Cup car, and open wheel racing, namely the Super Formula Light. And I've chosen these two cars for a specific reason. I've raced both of these car track combos in the last week, so I'm really familiar with the car, the track, and how to get the best out of that car at that track. And my pace in both wasn't too far away when I did the race in the top split. Now, to try and level the playing field as much as I possibly can, I've created a test session with static weather. I've set the track to 100% usage, so it's not going to get better over time. The track stays the same temperature for the whole session, and we've got the wind turned down as much as I possibly can. So I'm going to do 10 familiarization laps with each of the options just to get my head in the game with regards to the new view, etc. And then we're going to do 10 push laps, and then we'll see what the best time was in each of the sessions. But before we jump in any further, just going to tell you quickly about today's video sponsor, which is PC Specialist. So because I'm fortunate enough to run a PC Specialist system, I've got the horsepower in the computer to run triple 1440 and VR. I've completely redone my sim racing room, and the only thing that has remained is the PC Specialist computer, which is definitely the beating heart of this YouTube channel. So if you are thinking about buying a pre-built computer system, please check out the link to PC Specialist down below in the description. Use the code DAVE40 for £40 off your order. So thanks to PC Specialist for being absolute legends and continuing to support the channel. Now, I put out a community post on YouTube with a poll asking people what they thought would be quicker. People, hands down, thought that triple screens would be faster, followed by VR, then followed by a single screen. Let's see how close that poll is to reality. So the first test we're going to look at is the Porsche Cup car around the Hungaroring. Now, before last week, I really didn't like the Hungaroring, but it's a real challenge in the Porsche Cup car. There's never a minute's rest, lots of trail braking, lots of late apexes. It's definitely a track which I wouldn't think it would favour a single screen. Now, as you know, I run triple screens there, and I have done for a long time, but I've also dabbled with racing back on a single screen, and I can definitely see the benefits in both. But many of you won't know that I actually really like VR, and I've been using VR on and off for about 5 or 6 years. So on with the times, which is all you really care about. So the slowest around Hungaroring in the Porsche Cup car out of the three was the triple screens. I managed a 1 minute 47.966. Although that was the slowest out of this test, that was quicker than I went in the race a few days ago. So it's not like I'm just driving slower. Now, coming in P2 was the VR. In VR, I managed a 1 minute 47.787, just under a tenth quicker than I was on the triples. And coming out on top, to my surprise, was the single screen. And I managed a 1 minute 47.780. Now, admittedly, there's not much difference between the slowest lap with the triples and the fastest lap with the single screen, but it's almost 2/10 quicker. And at the sharp end, 2/10 is a lot. Now, I've got to tell you that I really enjoyed the stints I did with the single screen. I just felt that I was able to judge my braking markers better than I could on the triples. I felt like I had more control on the brakes, strangely enough. And I felt that the corner exits were just a bit more controlled. And with the VR, all the things that you see out of the windscreen, the reference points, it looked realistic. But although the single screen came out on top in the Porsche Cup at the Hungaroring, the optimal lap times told a different story. If we're talking optimal lap time, the winner was VR. My optimal in VR was almost a tenth quicker than it was with the single screen, and it was over 2/10 quicker than it was when I was on triples. Now, on to the single-seater at Monza in the Super Formula Light. Now, you'd think this would be easier on a single screen because you've just got your cockpit, your wheels, it's a central driving position. So you would think that that would favour a single screen, or that's what I thought. But in the Super Formula Light at Monza, in third place, we had the single screen. And our best lap was a 1 minute 42.567. In P2, it was the triples with a 1 minute 42.332. So coming out on top at Monza was the VR with a 142.178. And if we look at the optimal times here again, VR wins. Our optimal in VR was a 1 minute 42.103. And the single could only manage a 142.307. So in both track car combos, the VR wins the optimal lap time, which tells me that if you're familiar with it and you get used to it, it's going to be quicker. Now, there are a couple of reasons for that, in my opinion. So if you've not tried VR before, then you won't really understand what I'm going to say. So when you watch VR content on YouTube, it's obviously two-dimensional. It's just colours being moved around the screen. And when you're racing on a screen, you'll see a car out of your windscreen, and yeah, it looks as though it's further away, but it's just been drawn that way. But in VR, it's actually like you're sitting in the car, and that car is where it should be, because everything is three-dimensional. And because of that, and I'm old enough to have over 30 years driving experience, everything just feels natural. Where my car is on track, and where the corner is, where the braking zones are, it all feels natural. I find myself on a screen, whether it be triples or a single, looking for that braking marker, whereas in VR, it's just there out of my peripheral vision, and I use my position and speed to brake rather than nailing that braking marker. Turning's easier, hitting the apex is easier, corner exit's easier, and because of that, I'm overall quicker. It's just nailing that consistency. Now, at the beginning, I talked about caveats, and there are many, irrespective of which one you go for, single, triples, VR. So with a single screen, the benefits are that it's much easier to create content. You don't need a super powerful PC to run iRacing, for example, on a single screen. But you do lose that peripheral vision, and wheel-to-wheel battles are definitely much harder. But I've said before, how many times during a race are you actually side by side with another car? And it's not as often as you would think. And for those that are wondering, with my setup there, I used the single screen on my rig, and my field of view was set at 66, I think it was at the time of recording. But anywhere between 65 and 68 seems to work for me on there, and it feels quite natural. But yeah, you don't need as much horsepower to run the single screen, but you lose out on that peripheral vision. Now, with the triples, you obviously need a better computer to run triple 1440 screens. And because of that, you gain that peripheral vision. But again, how much of that do you actually need when you're racing? Yeah, it looks cool. The triple screen setups always look really cool. But the more I do things like this and race on a single screen, the more I actually think, I don't need those two side screens. I mean, don't get me wrong, I would never get rid of them. And I've got that rig there, and I've got one to my right here, both with triple screens. So I'm never going to get rid of triple screens. But I might actually do some more races with a single screen. Now, onto VR. The caveats are, you do feel a little bit claustrophobic when you've got the VR headset on. But thankfully, I mean, VR headsets now, I mean, look at the size of that. I can't talk about this. It's classified. I could tell you, but then I would have to kill you. But look at the size of that. It's tiny. It's like a pair of swimming goggles. I mean, I couldn't sit there with a big Pimax screen on my head. I know that for a fact. So it does feel a little bit claustrophobic but things are getting much better. And you can't see what you're doing when you've got the VR headset on. And you do need a pretty decent computer to run VR and hold that refresh rate. But if you've got everything synced up and you've got the hardware to run it, hands down, there's no better experience than VR when sim racing. And I've proven in this video that it's faster. But there's one big caveat for me as a content creator why I don't use VR all the time. And I feel like I lose that engagement. Even though I can't see you now, you can see me. If I can't look at the camera, I feel like I've lost the engagement. I don't know why, it's weird. So what would be my advice to anybody trying to figure out which route they want to go down? If I was just starting sim racing now, I would either go with a single screen or VR. Like I've said, triple screens is nice, but I don't think you need it. If you're on a screen, one screen's enough. You've got software to tell you when there's a car left or right, and as long as you know where you are in space and leave room, then you can race perfectly fine on a single screen. And on other sims such as Le Mans Ultimate and ACC, they have really good radars, so you can see exactly where everybody is. So that would be my advice. VR first, single screen second, triples third. Bizarrely, when I'm sitting there with triples, it's not until you sit down, try a few things out that you realise actually what works and what's better. So a bit of a different video, this one. Take from it what you want. So I'm sitting here now saying, oh, the next race I do, I'm going to do some more on a single, I'll do some more on VR. Chances are, because it's all set up, I'll just be doing them on triples because I've got them. But if you don't have them, then I probably wouldn't fork out and buy some. But as always, thanks for watching. Have a great week. See you later. Cheers.